I'd like to call up Mr. David Wilkins for a very special presentation.
Thank you, Greg. My name is Dave Wilkins. I am the Director of Global Research Programs at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, but that's not who I am. Who I am is a husband and a dad, a surfer, an ultimate Frisbee player, and someone with a great privilege to call Charlie Modica a good friend of mine. So 2 years ago, when I resigned from an organization that Charlie was on the board, he said, "You got to come down to Jupiter and have dinner with me." So I'm 10 minutes away from dinner, and I call him up, and he said, "This is great. I've got just enough time to get Joe. Joe's coming to dinner with us." So I call my brother up, and I said, "I told you about Charlie. He's bringing his famous friend Joe." And he said, "You're having dinner with Joe Biden?" "No, Joe Namath." "Oh, okay." So the first thing I noticed, we get to the restaurant, and it's called Charlie and Joe's. And I'm like, why'd they call? Oh, okay. I see what's going on here. What a dinner. So the first thing is, I couldn't get a word in edgewise because Joe kept asking me questions about me. What was your sister's name? What was your dog's name? What sport did you play in school? What band instrument did you play? I couldn't ask him anything. I'm like, who is this guy? I kid you not, 15 people walked up to us that night. You remember this, Charlie? "Are you Joe Namath? My cousin's mother's great aunt used to live across the street from your uncle's wife's nephew." Joe would get up and say, "That's amazing, we're related." He'd give him a hug. "Can we please take a picture? Susie, what's your birthday?" I'm like, who is this guy? Then somebody else walks to the table because he'd heard me talking about the ship. I was a hydrofoil pilot in the Navy on the USS Ares. He walks up and said, "I think I did an operation with you in the Caribbean in 1984. I'm like, am I on candid camera? What's going on tonight? But he knew details that couldn't be faked. So I'm like, "Charlie, can you take my picture with this guy?" And Charlie says, "Don't worry, I'm really good at this. I take pictures for Joe all the time." And I thought, it's Joe's turn. I want Joe Namath to take my picture. So you may have a picture with Joe Namath, but I've got one that he took of me. So that's pretty special. So then we got serious. And I told him, "Joe, my brother reminded me that we met you in 1969 in Subic Bay in the Philippines when you did your USO tour for the Vietnam War." And he started almost crying. And he looked at me and he said, "Dave, that was the most impactful thing I ever did in my life. These guys are in the hospital and they've just lost a leg or an arm, been through something horrible, and they wanted to see me because I was a football player." He said, "It brought me to tears and I couldn't believe how moving it was." Do you remember this, Charlie? Charlie got emotional even tonight. So then at the end of dinner, I said, "Charlie, Joe, I've got a huge regret to tell you and a big apology to make." And he looked at me really seriously. "What's the matter?" "I grew up as a kid in Baltimore, and I've spent my whole life really not liking you, and I was wrong. You're an incredible human being." So I drove away from that dinner realizing what I had to do. And it took me more than a year to get in touch with the right person. But one thing I'm really bad at is taking no for an answer. So I finally got a hold of Mark Leipson, who's a program director at the Vietnam Veterans Association of America. And when he heard that what I wanted to try to do was connect Joe back to some of these guys who are in these hospital beds, he was on it. So we haven't pulled that off yet, Joe, but we think we have a plan. But then he emailed me one day and said, "Dave, I talked to my leadership board about this, and they were so moved by your story about Joe's impact that we wanted to give him an award." So I would like Joe to come up here, please. I have been authorized by the President of the Vietnam Veterans Association of America to present tonight to you Joe Namath, the President's Award for supporting the troops in Vietnam, March 20th, 2025. And let me read the proclamation for you, please. From the Vietnam Veterans of America's National President, Jack McManus, in honor of his selfless visit in January 1969 following the New York Jets' victory in Super Bowl II. Hold on a minute, I was a Colts fan, it was Super Bowl III, they got a typo in here. To visit recuperating Vietnam War troops at U.S. military hospitals in Japan, Okinawa, the Philippines, and Hawaii, Vietnam Veterans of America proudly presents the 2025 President's Award for supporting the troops in Vietnam to the one and only Joe Namath. Joe. Congratulations. Now here's the problem. We're not done yet. Here's the problem. Joe needs to actually give an acceptance speech now and talk about that trip and what it meant to him. Hopefully I won't get too emotional because this video, we have a video production professional here, will be shown at the National Convention for the Vietnam Veterans this August in New Orleans. Joe.
All right. was a USO tour that there was 5 of us that went, counting the guide. Our guide, Marv Fleming, was a tight end for the the Green Bay Packers and the Miami Dolphins, and he and his team won 5 or 4 Super Bowls, man. There was an offensive tackle from the Giants named Steve Wright, who was a former Alabama player. And then there was a broadcaster named Charlie Jones, who was just wonderful. We had a guide, and with the guide, the 5 of us toured the hospitals of the Vietnam guys that were hurt, of our soldiers that were hurt. And it was tough seeing them. I mean, they were smiling at times, when we got there, but we're talking about guys that lost their limbs, guys laid up, man, and it was really a gut-wrenching thing to visit with them and try and cheer them up. We did some of that, but this took place in Japan and Okinawa, Subic Bay, and it's a lifelong memory. And the veterans that are here with us today and around our country, we need to really respect them for the rest of our lives. The heinous, the injuries that we saw, the last guy I saw over at, I think it was Tripler, it was in the Pacific, was a quadruple amputee. And he actually smiled whenever we. I'm sorry, but it was a real eye-opener to see what these guys are going through and what they were going to have to do the rest of their lives, the guys that were in the hospitals. And to this day, I have a great respect for our veterans and Army, Marines, Navy, Air Corps, man, all of them. So if we ever see the veterans around, let's give them a pat on the back and tell them thank you.
So we're actually going to do that right now. Joe Blaney asked me to do this. There's somebody in the crowd that warrants that. There's a lot of heroes in the room tonight, but there's one that probably stands out amongst us, and that is Major General Sparky Renfro. He's not expecting this at all. Could you please come up with me, sir? Now he's mad at his friend. Major General Renfro just finished a 41-year career in the Army, served 8 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and was the operations commander for the Battle of Fallujah. Sparky Renfro. Thank you, sir. You want to wrap something up like this with the greatest line ever. The problem is they've all been written. So, as Stephen Wright said, if you steal a line from one person, that's called plagiarism, but if you steal it from several people, that's called research. So I stole a line, I did some research on some of the great writers of our time. The Chieftains, Bruce Springsteen, Frank Sinatra, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles again, Jesus, Elmo from the movie Vision Quest, and Prince, who said, "Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Joe?" It's hard to find a good man in Pittsburgh. Sweet Home Alabama? No, New York. If you can make it there, and you did, you can make it anywhere. But you can't always get what you want in life, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. And in the end, all you need is love. So I would like to thank you, Joe, for being a friend to all of those veterans 56 years ago, to everybody in this room, for loving thy neighbor as thyself, and for just a moment lifting all of us to a higher place tonight. In honor of all that, I think we should party like it's 1999. Joe Namath.